Hey everybody, I'm Madalyn Sklar, host of the Social ROI Chat. I'm here with our awesome guest today. Please welcome Kathy Klotz-Guest. How are you, Kathy?
I'm great. Thanks, Madalyn. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you're doing great things. I mean, I see your name popping up everywhere. You're all over. You're just making waves out in the internet, in the digital marketing space, all over the place. And so I
Yeah.
just thought you would be great to have on to talk about content marketing. You know,
Yeah.
so today was the day, and
Today
so
was the day.
it was a great chat. I mean, what do you think? Very fast moving.
It is. I love doing tweet chats, but I always joke because I always feel like it really is like this fast moving stream and there's all these conversations and you're trying to you're flitting in and out and you're trying to stay on top of it. And it's like, shiny object syndrome. You're trying to answer questions, which are so amazingly great and they're important, big questions. And
Sure.
you've got all right, we probably don't need a part 20 for this question, Kathy, but it's like there's so many layers to these questions, which I love because they're not easily answered. They're big questions, but they're important questions. So I love that.
Right. And that's what makes this after chat so great. So that now we can kind of dissect some of these questions even more so that now you can talk about it. We can go beyond the 280 characters of a tweet. So we'll have a great conversation going through these. The topic today was boost your creativity and turbocharge your content marketing. That's a mouthful. That's a lot. I feel like we're packing it in with that.
We did. They're packed with value.
Yeah, totally. Well, how did you get into all this? Why don't you give us a little bit of background about you? What have you been doing and how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah. So I actually came out of high tech. I ran marketing. I actually started in products. And then I ran product, and then eventually I was on the outbound side. So rather than the inbound, I was really on the outbound sort of communication side. And all the while, 5-6 nights a week, I was doing comedy. I mean, I was at Comedy Sports for many years. I did Second City in LA, theater sports, and had been doing 16 years of stage work. And after about 15 years, trying to bring these two worlds together, my son was born. I had my son and I went, that's the impetus. I'm like, I don't want to go back. I remember saying to my husband, this is silly. I've got these two worlds and they belong together. And I know that I've got to figure out how to make this work because all this amazing stuff that I've learned, and I've been doing stage work now for about 22, 23 years now, all this stuff over here and how we as improvisers create with each other this amazing stuff on stage, these disciplines, these parts of our craft could make content and teamwork and all this amazing stuff, culture in companies so much better. So why am I over here living these parallel lives? This is crazy. So that was really the impetus for me to just go, you know what? No, this is silly. Take these two. And I think there's, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I've been amazed at, it hasn't been an easy journey because when I started, people were like, that's crazy comedy. But I'm an MBA. I have a master's in communication and I've got 23 years in stage comedy. So I'm like, wow. I got this. I can do this. It's going to be crazy to figure out, but I knew that it was something that it was my purpose. That's what I had to do. So
it was your calling. That's so cool. And you have a book too, right?
I do. Yeah. Yeah, the book is Stop Boring Me. And it's the first half of the book is really all storytelling lessons from improv, which I think can make individuals and teams better storytellers.
Sure.
And the second half of the book is exercises for how do we mash things up? How do we flip assumptions? How do we create incongruity and contrast? Because humor likes things that don't go together. Take the two craziest things you can think of, stick those together. And the more that you try to relate those, you're building these new neural pathways, which it's like a circuit training for your brain. And what's going to happen is over time, you're priming your creative muscles to work even when you're sleeping, and it's all great stuff. And that's really what the book's about.
Yeah, that's super cool. You're just doing some cool stuff. And
thank you. Thank you.
I see that we've got a nice little group of some of our chat participants that have made their way over here to the live chat. I see we got and Carlin, and Eugene here with us. So good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Always fun.
Hey. Yeah.
Hey, the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, of course. Hey, everybody.
So those that are watching, y'all could hit the little share button that's right below us right here. Share it, pass it along, let everybody know that we're having this awesome chat. So feel free. All right, let's jump into some of these questions because I really want to hear your expanded thought on it because you are doing great tweets. Your answers were awesome. And I can't wait to hear you talk about it now. This will be a lot of fun. So let's start with question number 1. What value do content marketers get from experimentation and testing, and why is it important to do this?
I think we play it safe a lot of the times. I think as marketers, we try to find a formula and replicate that. And that's okay. We're wired to, we want to be successful. We're wired to look for the things that we know are known entities to yield high success rate. The issue with that is then we get in that rut and we don't try new things. And I think what we forget about is that, somebody will try something, it'll work. And then over time, what happens is that no longer becomes the amazing thing. It becomes the expected, the bare minimum, the minimum viable product. Because what happens is we have the spillover effect and our competitors adopt the same thing. And then pretty soon everybody's at the same level. So the bar on augmented services and augmented experiences is always going up. And what we have to think about is, how do we then stay kind of one step ahead? And are we investing back into our teams some experimentation time, and are we encouraging that? And I find that a lot of teams are so busy keeping up, pumping out content. We got that brand machine. It's like a Dr. Seuss, brandifier machine. Right? We're cranking this stuff out, that there's not a lot of cycles left over to invest back into experimentation and taking that next step. And I think we have to, as marketers, kind of step back and go, you know what? This is working, but there's going to be a time when everyone's going to copy this and it won't work anymore. So we need to kind of figure that out before stuff breaks and the system that we have stops working. We have to figure that out. Coke does that. I think Coke spends about 10% of their marketing resources in just trying new stuff and breaking stuff. But they also make it safe for people to go break stuff, try stuff within some limitations. And they encourage that kind of experimentation. And that's what we have to do.
I think it's so important to experiment. I mean, I do it all the time because you won't know what works if you don't experiment and try things. So I think it's incredibly important. And
that's true in comedy. That's comedy too. We don't know. Unless we go try. We don't know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I watched that show called I'm Dying Up Here with the comedians from back in the 70s. Have you seen that show? I think it's on Showtime. It's interesting. It seems like, these open mic environments is a place to just try things out and experiment and practice.
The thing that I love more than anything else about an open mic, and I run a comedy show in Silicon Valley called Laugh Tracks every week, and I spent years doing stand-up before improv, and what I love about it is that is a living laboratory. It really is. And if you're not using that to fail and try new stuff, you're really not pushing the envelope. And so what I've tried to do with an open mic that I run, or if I do storytelling night or whatever I do, is encourage comics to come try new stuff. And if all you're doing is doing the jokes that you've been doing for a year and you already know they're working, you're not writing new material. And probably 80% of your new material will bomb. And maybe only 20% will work. And that's okay. Because once you discover that 20% ratio, it's sort of the Pareto rule of comedy, right? Once you discover what that is, you can then expand out and flesh, and we call it tags and runs, and we can blow up and flesh out the stuff that we know works. And so I think we need to learn a lot from open mics. And if we sort of had a little bit more of an open mic kind of policy in our content world, in our companies, I think people would take more risks. So we have to make it safe for people to fail and risk.
Exactly. Gosh, that is so cool. All right. So thank you for giving us a
Yeah.
very enlightened response to that. Let's look at question number 2, because this was a really good one.
Yeah.
Innovation often results from combining things that don't always belong together. I love this. So how can marketers use this principle when creating content?
It really is so true. I think the biggest ahas come when we disrupt the expected pattern. You know,
Oh yeah.
I expect things to work a certain way, and over time, what ends up happening is our brains acclimate, and we don't see anything new anymore. So, humor is all about disrupting expected patterns. I'm going to take that status quo and I'm going to break the crap out of that, because when we do that, our brain goes, well, that's new. I didn't expect that. And so the more that we can start to put things that people wouldn't expect to go together, the more we delight people. I mean, I think I mentioned this in the tweet chat. I'm not a big country music fan, but when I was watching American Idol and I saw Caleb, this current round season's contestant, he's a country singer. He did a version of Prince's "When Doves Cry," and everybody, like Lionel Richie, all the judges were like jaw drop, because it was such a bold act of innovation to go out there and take this huge big risk, but it worked.
Yeah.
So the more that we can kind of do that, and I think if we can start to take things that we think wouldn't work, maybe you could bring, if you're a coffee, company, bring in an experience of a playground. What if you had a playground theme and you had theme days in your coffee shop and you had astronaut stuff and you timed it with current events and you made it an experience? I mean, there's nothing that says you can't do that, and it's not expected. And if you became that one coffee shop in your neighborhood that did that, like, everybody be going there.
Exactly.
I
mean, if I feel like that, you just have to be not afraid to fail, because when you experiment, it may not work. And I've learned that that's okay, right? Like, okay, if it doesn't work, move on to the next thing, right? So, my big experiment that I shared during the chat for this question was that, a year ago, I got this big idea, like, why don't I do an after chat, but on Facebook? So we do a Twitter chat here on Social ROI, and then afterwards, let's bring the guest on, let's have an after chat, but let's do it on Facebook. And at first, people are like, wait, you're going to go from Twitter to Facebook? Like they're wondering, like, why was I not doing Periscope? And people were quite surprised. I mean, I didn't get too much pushback, but I did have people like question me, like, wait a minute, you're like this Twitter marketing expert, you're all about Twitter, why are you doing this after chat on Facebook? And I wanted to do something completely different. It's like, why not? Everybody likes live video over there, so why not experiment and see if that worked? Right?
Yeah, and build cross promotion kind of,
exactly,
little kind of things there. Why wouldn't you do that? It's so important. I think the one thing we talk a lot about failing, and the one thing that really we have to overcome is, we can talk about it all day long. Companies still need to make it safe for people to fail, because I talk to people all day long in Silicon Valley, where I'm at, and we give a lot of lip service to it. People, it's not a lack of, I think, innovative ideas. It's a lack of people trusting their environment, that if I do fail, what are the consequences? What are the repercussions? And I think we need to do better at a cultural level to encourage that in our teams. So, if I say, hey, everybody, it's the classic, and I did a cartoon on this on my website. It's sort of the classic of, I'll give you 50 reasons. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't disrupt the status quo. Don't do this. Now go innovate. And people are like, what? What do you want from me? So we've got to make it a safe place to, if we're going to say go innovate, let's prove it. Let's prove it to teams that we got their back. And improv is all about, I got your back on stage. Whatever you say, I'm going to yes and you. And which is why taking those concepts and bringing them into business are so powerful, because that's how we're able to, without a net, do what we do. And it's because everything you say to me, I'm going to yes and that. There is no wrong here. And that's how we're going to move this scene forward.
Wow, that's powerful. I love it. Now, being that I'm a solopreneur, I have it much easier. Like I don't have like, okay, if something fails, I move on to the next thing. I don't have a boss yelling at me for failing, you know? So that's definitely a benefit of like being, you know, your own boss, your small business, and that doesn't become an issue. But yeah, for like bigger brands and teams, I can totally see where like, you know, there can be that fear factor, right?
There definitely can be. I mean, you know, I wish it were easy to just kind of wave that magic wand and like, you know, have that. That's a cultural mind shift. We have to change the conversation around experimentation, because all we do in marketing is give lip service to experiment. Everybody knows that, but we never, unless we're going to make the conditions ripe for people to do it and not fear, okay, what happens if it fails? We're not going to get that. So you have to start at that cultural level. It is much easier as a solopreneur. And I will confess that I take a lot of risks on Twitter, and I put out jokes, I put out content, and I can tell pretty quickly whether people like it or they don't like it. And it's funny because usually it's not mixed. You know, usually it works, and then I go, you know what, that concept, that tweet works. So now I can flesh that out into a post. Or sometimes people don't like it. You know, if I had a nickel for every time, Madalyn, I had to explain what parody actually is to somebody who doesn't have that gene. Yeah. It's like, okay, you're not my audience, but at least it's okay. At least I'm out there, you know,
at least you're doing so exactly. At least you're doing something that really, exactly. Or as like Brian Fanzo says, press the darn button, press the damn button, whatever it is, you know, just do it. Like, you know, like do it. It's important. That's usually when I whip out my tattoo. My just do it. It's real. Just do it. You know,
that's a badass tattoo, by the way.
It really is. Like, I so firmly believe in this. I mean, it's really a big part of, you know, how I feel, my approach to business. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 22 years now, and you know, and failed early on. So that's why I'm not afraid to try things, because I've been conditioned that, okay, what's the worst thing that will happen? Whatever that worst thing is, it's not really a big deal. I think people focus too much on the what ifs. And if I fail, you know, I'm just a failure and nobody will like me and nobody will do business with me. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You know, you're better off trying than not. So
you are, and I think the hard part today is because of boundaries like politics, and there are things that people fear, especially you don't have that latitude. I think it's harder when you are in a team in a brand, and the brand has legacy and heritage, and you're always worried about running afoul of the brand. But if you are fortunate enough to be, or unfortunate, I mean, it you know, has ups and downs and pros and cons. If people like us who are small businesses can't do it, there's really no excuse, because we're accountable to ourselves, and we have to push that envelope. We have to go out there and try. And that's where we have an advantage. We can move nimbly. Then bigger brands can't. So let's use the thing that we have, which is we're built for speed. We're built for, you know, and nothing will prepare you for failure like comedy. And Lord knows I've failed enough times in my life, but this is a good thing. And I say this freely. I have failed so many times in my life, more times than I can count. And you know what? I've learned what works and what doesn't. And so I'm better off for it. So it's okay. You know, I'm living proof. You can figure it out eventually. But you can learn from those failures. So failure is not fatal. Just get out there and try.
Ooh, I love the tweetable right there. Failure is not fatal. Love it.
Unless you're riding a motorcycle or something.
Well, yeah, then that might be an issue. So question number 3, in what instances can marketers use humor to help a brand stand out from the crowd?
There's so many instances. I think most brands actually have more latitude and wiggle room than they think. You know, every brand's worried about, oh, my brand elasticity doesn't bend that far. I actually disagree with that. I think big brands are too conservative. Big brands are made up of people. So I'm so sick of the dog ate my homework crap on this. Big brands, I'm talking to you. You know what I'm thinking. Time out, corner. Because it's an excuse. So I actually think you have more wiggle room than you think. because people are fundamentally human and they want to laugh. If you're the bright spot in their day that actually from all the crappy emails and all the crappy conference calls they had, if you're the bright spot that makes people laugh, they're going to remember you. So I actually think we do have more latitude, and it's fear that holds us back. So I say humor is great when you have to get attention, rebrand, reframe something. Nobody wants to talk about certain things. And if you have a daunting task of having to talk about things that can be tricky, it's a delicate balance. But if you do it right, humor can kind of break the ice on certain things. So I say the only time really, there are some caveats about humor, and you have to know when. Like if there's been your brand has done something stupid and people got hurt, you can't use humor because now you look like a jerk who doesn't care. So you come off glib. But I actually really believe that more brands can use humor than not. And big banks are starting to do it. Big banks are starting to do that because they recognize that millennials are going, I don't like your boring, crappy content.
Yeah, so, stuffy. Yeah, stuffy and boring.
Work. It's boring. Yeah. It's boring. Yeah.
So when I think of humor on Twitter, I think of Wendys. Wendys really dominates that. What's your take on the way Wendys has really branded their sense of humor on there?
I think Wendys has done a good job, and I think it's funny. Everyone's looking forward, like, let's all flock to Wendys. Oh, let's all flock to Oreos. Let's all flock to like the brand of the moment. We're all looking for the brand du jour. That's the clouds will part and give us the humor insight, and I think Wendys has done an amazing job. Other brands have tried to copy them. Arby's does a good job. I think Arby's has been pretty funny. And I think that it can be really instructive, but I also caution people to don't copy the template.
Yeah.
Wendys is great at what they do, but they have a brand and brand values and a sensibility that they've honed. So watch it, think they're doing a great job, but make it your own. Again, take that best practice and break it and make that template your own.
Yeah. Great advice. Exactly. Yeah. See what everybody's doing, get ideas from that, but then make it your version of it. Yeah. That fits your brand voice. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I see we got some more people that have come into the live chat. Hello to Katarina and Stacey. Hello. They both just joined us. All right. So moving along, let's, we could sit here and talk all day about this. So why don't we just do, let's do one more question. This was an interesting one. Question number 5. How can improvisation techniques be used by marketers to improve creative output?
Yeah. Well, there's so many ways. And I think that the fundamental part of it, the biggest part of it, I think, is let go and collaborate with other people to create content. This is such an important concept. Marketing departments like to think that they're the keeper of the content, and they kind of are in the sense that it's their job to add value. What if marketing saw itself as collaborators internally with all the people internally who are subject matter experts or storytellers? And what if they actually co-created content with some of the internal subject matter experts, or co-created, content with, their audience, with your customers, or put something out on Twitter and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about today. What would you like to see, or how would you create this story, or how would you tell this story? And I think marketers are so scared to let go. Oh, it doesn't fit the brand. We have to control it. And what I don't think they understand is that when you let go and let people create with you, you increase the emotional investment because people created it. And what do? We share things we create. So I'd say the very first way isn't even about being funny. It's the very first way that I think we need to think about improv in marketing is let's let go a little bit marketing and recognize that we can create things in a more collaborative way with different stakeholders. Yeah. And then the next way I would say is really improvisation is all about being in the moment and being spontaneous. I'd love to see more teams embrace things that are happening in the moment and relevant, and trust your teams to say yes and to a customer or to something happening in the moment to create an in the moment piece of content. You know, we're all chasing the Oreos thing, but Oreos could not have done that unless they had high trust in their team and they embraced a moment and said yes and to that. At the very least, let's have teams yes and each other and use the yes and exercise to heighten content ideas so that we're saying, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's add on to that. And if you heighten an idea rather than look to kill it, but look to flesh it out, you're going to have so many more amazing ideas. So many more.
I love this. And Stacy is at GoDaddy. That's where she works at.
Yeah.
And she says that's what they're doing with employee ambassadors and external influencers now. That is awesome. I mean, kudos for a big company like that to do that. That is super awesome.
Yeah.
This has been such great information, Kathy. I mean, I could just sit here and listen to you talk about this all day. You're so knowledgeable with this. For those that are watching, if they would like to, you know, chat with you more or get more information about you, where should they go online?
Sure. A couple places. You can check me out at keepingithuman.com. That's my main hub, my home base. You can also reach out to me at Kathy Klotz-Guest on Twitter, no hyphen. I'm at Kathy Klotz-Guest everywhere except Instagram because they said at Kathy Klotz-Guest was, you know, a little long. But I know it's like makes no sense. But yeah, just reach out to me and happy to continue to chat and you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Well, I just posted the link. So there's Kathy's Twitter. You guys be sure to follow her if you're not already. And then her website, keepingithuman.com. Check that out as well. Thank you so much for your time today, Kathy. This has been awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Madalyn. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to everybody watching. It's just been so great to see such a great community come together and come on the Twitter chat and then come over here on the Facebook Live afterwards. So inspiring to have this just community greatness. So all righty. Well, that's it. That's what we got. So we'll be back next week for another awesome chat. So until then, I'll see everybody out on Twitter. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.